Renaissance Community, all is well and all is in divine order. And who is God? We are. So the order that we put things in are the orders that we see things. A couple of weeks ago, Harper, who was our famous skater, who hangs out with Lyric, she greeted me at the door, and she asked me a question. She said, "Why are you always so happy? We can always see your teeth." And truthfully, on that day, Brett, I didn't do a good job of going into depth, Reverend Wilma, in the response that I gave her. I simply said, "That's just the way I am." Don't we all give those kind of canned answers? That's just the way I am. But what I should have told her is, in fact, that I am one of the most optimistic, hopeful people you ever meet. And I should have shared with her that way, way back in the 1990s, there was a song that I adopted as my early morning anthem. And I continue to adopt this song as my early morning praise song, my early morning pledge, my early morning affirmation. But it reflects the energy, the faith, the spirit, the optimism that I have every time I'm granted the opportunity to put my feet on the floor. That song was written by some Detroiters, native Detroiters, powerful women in the Hall of Fame of gospel music. But it was a song that my mother and I used to listen to all the time. And when I say 1990s, it was back when vinyl records were being played. But this song is something I grew to have an affinity because of the words. I'm expecting a miracle. And I know what I know. And what I know is that God can make miracles happen through me, with me, because of me. And that song by the Clark sisters, Miracles, had phraseology in it that I still hold tight every day as an affirmation of the power to manifest the things that we want. And it said, I'm looking for a miracle. I'm expecting the impossible. I'm feeling the intangible. I'm seeing the invisible. The sky is the limit to what I can have. So if we could all just rise up this morning to our feet, I want to make that our affirmation for this morning. Is that okay if we do that? Is that all right? I think it's so powerful and fitting because we're always in this community with mastermind, and the whole thing about masterminds, we're going to mastermind miracles. The things that seem to be impossible can become possible. And that potentiality is where we want to be at all times. And so can we just repeat after me? With the spirit and the energy and the faith and the assurance that I say it every morning. I'm looking for a miracle. I'm expecting the impossible. I'm feeling the intangible. I'm seeing the invisible. The sky is the limit to what I can have. And the sky really is not the limit, because I can go out of limits and bless myself with miracles manifested. Look at somebody and tell them, I'm expecting a miracle. And then just put a comma right there. Just wish a comma on them. Let's wish a comma. Do like this, just put the comma right there and say, and I'm going to get my miracle. You may be seated. Understand the fact, the observation, the law, and the truth. In life, the only thing you're going to get is what you get. Whatever you get in your mind as your understanding of divine word, will, and way, God, the mastermind, spirit, determines the reality of your world. You understand that? And I could go Flip Wilson on you if you want me to. And Flip Wilson said what? What you see is what you get. And so my question to you this morning, Adam, my son, is how well do you see? Everyone in here, how well do you see? And that's not necessarily with the five senses and the eyes that I see. It could be a third eye, the third eye of the mind, the third eye that sometimes appears to be blind. But I ask you, how well do you see? And when I'm thinking about that word, well, and going to the well means how well do you see? Do you see with enhanced lucidity or limitation? Now that word, lucidity, means clarity or clearness of vision, of sight, thought, and expression, manifesting your destiny. So we got that? And so the question to you is, how well do you see? Is it a clear path forward, or is your vision limited? That's the question. And so let's tackle this thing this morning. We're still in the Lent season, and Reverend Wilma opened us up talking about that. We talked about wisdom and how we go through these 40 days, and they're all about lifting ourselves up to a higher, a purer oneness with God. The I am becomes greater than ever before, the force that moves us forward. Greater. This 40-day pilgrimage, it's all about us choosing to move away from lesser and moving towards greater. Can we say lesser or greater? Where do you want to be? Say it loud. Greater or lesser? Greater. And so I'm not sure about that, but when we come to the end of this message, you're going to have to clarify what you want, because the clarification is the moment that everything becomes clarified. They says rewind. They said that's easy for me to say. But the clarification clarifies and gives us clarity as to what we want to see as we move forward. And that's what we want. And so the doublespeak speaks in a way that makes us alert and aware that we have some work to do, some depth that we need to go into greater. And it's that greater depth that we need to have right now as we go through the Lent season. Everybody talks about Lent and what you're giving up for Lent, and they begin to name these physical things. What are you going to give up, Stuart? Fried food, chocolate, the Hennessy, the Grey Goose, the Jack Daniels, the Budweiser. Am I home yet? Some people say, don't call me out like that. But it's not about the physical things we give up. It's about those mental things that pose that barrier, that stone. Remember that stone? Remember the stone, the big stone that blocked the entryway and the exit way for Jesus to get out? That big tomb, and that stone was there. And so as we proceed through the weeks, I'm going to ask you, what's the stone that's blocking your way forward? What's the stone that's keeping you from your manifestation of destiny? What's the stone that's posing the greatest challenge to you? What's the stone that's making you not have a connection to the energy, the spirit, and the faith that you need? What is the stone? But that's in a couple weeks. But just ponder on that. What's the stone? Because when we come to Resurrection Sunday, at some point over the 40-day period, you're going to have to move that stone away. Or this is not a true experience of the Lent season. And that resurrection, that renewal, that reassociation with your higher self can't happen. You have to deal with the stone that's blocking your path forward, that has you in a tomb. And so here we are, the consciousness, the intentional move away from lesser into greater. And so that may move us away from the people, the things, the places, the thoughts that create barriers for us. The question is always, are you on the right road to where you want to be headed? Or have you stopped? Are you stagnant? Are you in a situation where you've been there too long? What's the barricade that's blocking you? What is that barricade all about that's stopping you from your highest self, your highest potential? It's always a question that you have to ask yourself every day as you're in search of a miracle. The miracle can't be manifested. Is your vision, your power, your dominion, your authority is blocked. And so I want to give you a tool this morning to help you out. Because when I mentioned that song, it came out in the 90s, everybody moaned and groaned like, that's not too long ago. Because from our perspective, it's really not, because we remember the 90s. Some of us remember the 80s. Some of us remember the 70s and the 60s and the 50s. Some of us even the 40s. So it's not that long ago in our mind. But I want to give you a tool today. And this tool, I think, is very important as you move down that path of the Lent season. 40 days of releasing and letting go. Do you want this tool this morning? That's the question. If you want the tool, just clap. That tool is called, I don't know if I need to share it. Try this terminology on for you. Referential rumination. Referential rumination. My lips don't move the way they do sometimes. But the idea is that we need wisdom to open doors. We toy with wisdom. There's 1,000 books in the library about wisdom. Wisdom through the ages. Song. But what is wisdom? When we writ ourselves down to it, whittle it down to it, what is wisdom? Wisdom is simply extracting lessons from the experiences that we've had. Wisdom is that sense of knowing, that gut feeling. I've seen something like this before, and so I know not to go down that road, that path again. Wisdom is knowing that if I have the sensory perception that something is not good for me, then it's probably bad for me. Wisdom is knowing that though they dress up, they smell good, maybe they're not good for me. Reverend Wilma helping me out. I feel like. But we know this, right? It's like they say, but we know this, man. Because we have this sensory perception based on our past experiences that we know. It's like you go to the doctor, and the doctor tells you, you have high blood pressure, so you got to change your diet. And what do? You go out and get a pork chop and hot sauce. The numbers go through the roof and you say, I don't know what happened. Or you got legs to swell up and you eat a big bag of Pringles. Salt. And so we ask ourselves, why do we do what we do? Can you ask yourself that? Why do I do what I do? It feels good. Brother, you said it. At that moment, it feels good. But the lingering effects, the elongated effects, is that it's not so good. And so when we look at this term, we're saying this is a tool, but it really is a practice of reflecting. What are we reflecting on? It's right there. Spiritual, divine guidance, to reveal the Christ Spirit legacy of providing goodness, grace, and generosity. Now, when we say that goodness, grace, generosity, what are we talking about? Goodness, grace, and generosity. God's gifts. The Christ Spirit's gift to us when we connect to that Christ Spirit. I remember in a story that could be an example of this. I'm thinking about a man named David. Anybody ever heard of David? A biblical character. Eventually, he became a king. But if you remember David was something else. David was a piece of work. If you recall who David was, but David had some characteristics about him that some of us can relate to. David was a worker. You remember David when we were first introduced to David? David was in the field tending to his father's sheep. He was fighting off lions, tigers, and bears. Oh my. Remember that? David was a worker. David was a warrior. David was a warrior, and when grown men wouldn't stand up to Goliath, David said, as a team, I'll go up against him and I will slay him. David was a warrior. Remember the armor that they tried to put on David? He said, I don't want this. I don't need this. I'm fine with a slingshot and a couple rocks. And the men saying, let's get this tombstone ready. Because there ain't no way no teenager going to defeat a giant with a slingshot and a rock. So David was a worker and he was a warrior. How many of you can relate to him up to this point? That you're a worker? You'll put in the time to work. And you're a warrior. You've had some battles in your life that you've had to work through, fight through, get through. So, like David, you're a worker and you're a warrior. But David was also weak. David would give in to temptations. David liked what he liked, and he'd do anything to get what he liked. David loved to sip on fine beverages. David loved women, beautiful women. He collected them. But David got distracted by temptation. How many of us can say at certain moments that we're weak? He said nobody's perfect. So we can all admit to sometimes being weak, can't we? And so we see ourselves with three characteristics of David, right? David was a worker. David was a warrior. David was weak. But God said, David is a man after my own heart. God loved some David. How could God love David? And that's the only person in the Bible that he said is the man after my own heart. Flawed, problematic, sinning. David. How could he use him? Sure, he was a worker. He was a warrior. He was weak. But God said there was a fourth thing about David that always brings me to want to have a connection to him. David was a worshiper. And David would worship in his weakest moments. David would come up strong and worship the Lord. And David, in one of his worst times, he saw himself in exile from his hometown, saw himself on King Saul's must-be-murdered list. You ever been on anybody's must-be-murdered list? I hope not. Long time ago. Tell us about your history. Must-be-murdered list. So he's on the run. David flees to the next town over. It's like running from Detroit to Southfield. So when he gets there, he thinks for a moment, I can let my hair down and just live a little. But then he realizes that the king there, King Abimelech, already knows that he's on Saul's hit list. And so he says, bring David to me. David's men bring him to the king. David doesn't have any recourse because he knows at this point he's going to be killed, murdered, done away with, finished, kaput. So David begins to fake that he has a mental illness, that he's gone crazy. Foam begins to come out of his mouth. And so the king says, get him out of here. Send him away from our city. So David, reflecting, thinking, begins to talk about the troubles, the trials, and tribulation of his life. Anybody in here has any troubles, trials, and tribulation in your lifetime? Can we say that together? I've had troubles. I had trials. I've had tribulations. And David is thinking about this. He's thinking, I've had my good days. I've had my bad days. But I won't complain. Because my good days outweigh my bad days. And so again, I won't complain. I can't complain. When I look back over the terrain of my life, I can't complain. But I have to be grateful for what I've experienced. And so at that moment, David sat down, and in that moment of reflection, and he's going through this referential renunciation, he begins to pen Psalm 34. Psalm 34 is a reflection of his life, poured out. But it's just one passage that I want to turn our attention to this morning, if that's okay. When you go home or get in your car, you can Google Psalm 34. But it's Psalm 34, verse 4 through 7, that I want to put our eyes on right now, if that's okay. Is that okay with everybody? It says, I sought the Lord, and he answered me. He delivered me from all my fears. Those who look to him are radiant. Their faces are never covered with shame. This poor man called, and the Lord heard him. He saved him out of all of his troubles. What troubles? All of his troubles. The angel of the Lord encamps around those who fear him, and he delivers them. Is that enough? But it doesn't mean much until we break it down. I sought the Lord, and he answered me. What did he do? But what did he do before he got answered? He sought. You seek and you, but you have to seek. You seek and you find. He delivered me from all my fears. Seeking the Lord means what? I'm turning inward. I'm doing a 180. I'm not looking outside of me. I'm coming inward. I'm bringing it all in to the storehouse. And he said, I'm connecting with the presence within myself, the oneness that is me in the Christ. And he said, all of my fears, meaning that all fears, doubts were transcended by making that connection and being delivered. Do y'all see that? Looking to him. Who is the him he's looking to? And the Lord is ourselves, the Christ Spirit that lives within us, the God that is connected to us 365. This year, 366, because this is a leap year. Y'all knew that, right? All right. And so he said, the word radiant struck me. Radiant. Radiant means help thee. Healthy, joyful, prosperous. It's the inner fulfillment. Then it went down and said, the poor man called. What y'all know about the poor man? Huh? Huh? We're it. The poor man, and we could say poor woman, interchangeable. When we're not at our optimal level, when we don't sense that full connection to the Spirit, to God, all of a sudden we feel impoverished, lacking in some way, shape, or form. And so I feel that impoverishment. Something's lacking, Adam. I don't feel like my old self. Anybody ever say that? I wake up and I don't feel like my old self. I don't feel as strong. The faith is not as strong. The signal is not as strong as it once was. And so I'm feeling like that poor man. The poor man called and the Lord heard him. But the poor man did what? He called. He called. Activating the voice, he called. And he saved him from all his troubles. Divine intervention, divine guidance. And the angel of the Lord represents what? The angel of the Lord encamps around those who fear him. So what is the Lord? In that stanza, what is the Lord? Ideas? What else? It's divine guidance and protection. Security. When you call on security, security has a way of knowing to create a formation around you. It encamps all around you because you're a 360-degree person. And so you have to be encamped all around you. And so when you see that encamps around those who fear him, what is the fear? What is the fear all about? That what? He may not answer. I love that, brother. But you're getting a D on that test. Huh? Fear is guilt. I've done something like David, and because I've done something like David, in my moments of weakness, I feel as though that energy, that power, that authority, that connection to God is not present. But not so. It's ever present, ever available. And so when you think about that, that angel encamps around you. It's just a reassurance. It's a guarantee. It's a safety valve. And all that lets you know that you can move forward, onward. See, David left us some powerful lessons. But it is the goodness, the grace, the guidance of the almighty power. And so there's some lessons to be extracted from David. There are some lessons to be extracted from the Clark sisters. At home, when Leah wants something done from me, she doesn't call me baby. She don't call me cutie pie. She called me Gleniford. Can everybody say Gleniford? She calls me Gleniford. But when she calls me Gleniford, she says, Gleniford, do you think you can do? Gleniford, do you think you can make this happen? Gleniford, when you have time, can you go? Gleniford, do you think you can give me a couple dollars? But what she's doing is giving me a honey-do list, right? Anybody ever heard of a honey-do list? A honey-do list. Honey-do list. But what if we had a honey-do list for spiritual alignment? What if we had this, and because I love you, and you know I love you, and there's nothing you can do about it, right? Y'all know that. And so we know this man. Can everybody say, we know this man? And he loves us. And so he's going to give us a honey-do list. And these are things that you must do to stay on track, to stay on path. Number one, engage in what? Say it again. Engage in what? That's trust in the Christ Spirit continuously, forever and a day. Can we say forever and a day? That summarizes it. That means forever. If you add a day to it, to forever, you pass forever. Because we want that guidance and presence connection. Second one is speak the word. We don't speak about lack and limitation and a lackluster life. We're talking about communicating with the Christ Spirit through prayer, affirmations, affirming the truth and nothing but the truth and the presence and the power that lives within us. Can we say that? Speak the truth. Speak the truth. Speak the truth. The third one, clarify your desires. Remember when I said earlier that you got to clarify, and with that clarification, you clarify the things that you want. If we have wishy-washy prayers and affirmations and thought processes, how can you get what you want if you're not aiming at a target? And so you need to define what you want and make it clear. Speak it. Clarify those desires. Can we say clarify my desires? Clarify my desires. And number 4, last one, the cornerstone of them all. This is the one that gets you in trouble, that trips you up. Oh, this is the one, Brett, where they just get tripped up. They're just walking along, so I can do all those first 3. Then they get tripped up on this one. Tripped up, because what you got to do, eliminate distractions. Oh boy, here we go. Identify and be willing to let go of any distractions that may hinder your connection to the Christ Spirit. Whether, can we say whether? They involve your time, your talents, or your resources. So some things have to go. Some people have to go. Let go. Release. And let go. I want us to do an affirmation as I close out. If we engage ourselves, speak, clarify, eliminate, all four of those things require action. It's not a passive approach to life. Can't do 2 out of 4. Can't do 1 out of 4. Can't do 3 out of 4. Can't do 2 out of 4. Can't do 1 out of 4. You got to do 4 out of 4. To remove that stone away from that tomb that sometimes you find yourselves in. That's what we want. I added up the calls that I received last week, and I received it was 211 calls and text messages from people who are desiring a change. Desiring a change. Imagine that. Over 200 calls and text messages. And I'm just one person. But then they all come down to, Brett, when I'm preparing this message, it came down to those 4 things. Engage, speak, clarify, and eliminate. Eliminate those things that no longer serve your highest self. Can we stand and do this affirmation? I believe that there's power when we stand, that all things work together for our good, when we can put our mind, body, and spirit together. Just repeat after me. Y'all know me by now. We have a relationship. We've been going steady for a while. You know, I believe in doing everything with high energy, high enthusiasm, high excitement. Why? Because I'm expecting a miracle. And everywhere I go, I'm searching for a miracle. And as I seek, I find miracles. Over the course of my 60 years of living, every time I seek for that miracle, it stands before me. And I just walk through that door saying, thank you, Lord. Repeat after me. I'm awake. Some people got their hands in their pocket. Some people look like they're holding a baby, but ain't no baby in their hands. Energy is created by our hands. That's okay. You may smack the person they wake up. Go like this. I awaken. I am awake. I awaken to the truth of my oneness with spirit and all creation, with Christ consciousness as my guiding light. I walk the path of this life, expressing the divine qualities of love, of peace, harmony, and prosperity. With every thought, every word, every action, I am a vehicle. I am a vessel for the manifestation of miracles. I affirm, I am affirming that I am that divine presence within me is limitless. And I embrace the possibilities, the potentiality of the possibilities, of the potentiality of what I can be, do, have I can have it all. I am optimistic about my now and about my future. And so it is. Amen. You may be seated.